Alabama decided not to take Ty Simpson to SEC Media Days, and I think it's the right call.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama, AHSA Radio Network. Luke Robinson, that's me. Alabama internet legend Jimmy Stein, that's him. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. We'll talk about FanDuel in just a little bit. I want to thank you every day for being here every day. Thank you, newbies, for being here today, and thanks to everybody for making this your first listen every single day. You guys are the best. So, Jimmy, SEC Media Days starts next week, and, it's always a deal. Last night on our Sports Blitz program that we do every Tuesday, we do a preview. We had the Locked On host for Texas and another guy from Gene's page regarding Mississippi State. And I actually asked the Mississippi State guy, who's much older, but I said, hey, the thing about SEC Media Days, we really don't learn much, do we? I mean, we already kind of know it all now because we're in the information age and you get it all so quickly. He was like, actually, I think it's opposite. He said, it's the only time I get to talk to the coaches in all of July. So he said, I do kind of learn a little more. Now, again, I still think that you can learn as much from a message board as you can from media days at this stage in the game. But it is exciting. It does signify the beginning of the season. And, so here we go. And Alabama is taking three dudes. My co-host last night was like, boy, are you worried that he didn't take Ty Simpson? I was like, no. He said, I said, I wouldn't take Ty. I said, the whole thing would be about Ty. When Tim Keenan deserves his love, Kaden Proctor deserves his love, and of course Deontay Lawson, who's coming back after getting hurt against Oklahoma, he deserves his love. Those are the guys that need to go.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of or some reaction about where's Ty Simpson, where's Ryan Williams. I think this is, first of all, I've paid great attention to this Media Days thing every year, going back as long as I can remember. Media Days is not new. It's been going on decades, not like, oh, this wasn't something they started 5 years ago. This has been going on for years and years and years and years. And I pay great attention every year. I never dreamed for 1 second that they would bring Ty Simpson or Ryan Williams. If they did, it would have been completely unprecedented. Two ways. Number one, the only quarterbacks Alabama has ever bought to Media Days, ever, and we had 17 years of Nick Saban doing it, were returning starting quarterbacks. They had never bought one that was in the midst of a competition. And when you all say there's no competition, they already named Ty the starting quarterback. No, they did not. They didn't come close to doing that, and they have not done that. Ryan Grubb, who's not Kalen DeBoer, Ryan Grubb said, if we played a game in the spring and we were playing a game, then Ty would start that game. Yes, that's insightful. Yes, that's telling us who's ahead, but it's not naming Ty Simpson the starting quarterback before fall camp even starts. So it would have been unprecedented for Alabama to bring a quarterback who is not a returning starter and then going even one step further, hasn't even been named the official starting quarterback of the team. As for Ryan Williams, Alabama has never bought, ever to my knowledge, certainly not under Nick Saban, never bought a true sophomore as a Media Days representative. Alabama typically brings almost every year seniors or juniors who are, this is their last year. I mean, that they bring the older kids. As a matter of fact, what's really insightful here is you're probably looking at three captains. You're probably looking at three of the four captains. That's typical of what Alabama brings. And Alabama's not going to name a first-year starting quarterback a captain. Alabama's not going to name a true sophomore a captain. Here's who's going to be a captain. Deontay Lawson, Tim Keenan, probably Kaden Proctor, and one more on offense. Maybe Parker Brailsford, maybe Jam Miller, maybe Jeremy Bernard. Those are your likely candidates for the fourth captain spot. But no, I wasn't surprised at all. It's not what I predicted. I thought it'd be Brailsford and not Proctor. But the more I thought about it, the more, Proctor makes more sense. Almost certainly going pro. Been at Bama from day one, whereas Parker came in with the Washington crew. Probably didn't want to say Parker's more representative of Alabama than Kaden Proctor at this juncture, though Parker may very well be a captain.
Agree totally. And that was my thinking last night, as my co-host was like, sort of an interesting trio. And I said, well, I look at it this way. Tim Keenan, this is a guy who's sort of a gump. I mean, he's a Bammer, and so he's put in the work. He's put in the time. He deserves this. It's not the biggest accolade in the world to get to go, but it's
a reward. It is a reward.
So I'm down with him. Then I'm definitely down with Deontay Lawson, who I believe should be the leader of the defense.
He was a captain last year, and he's coming back.
He's coming back. He still could have gone pro, even though he was injured. And he
thought he was. Yeah. Staff thought he was.
And he still comes back. And then Kaden Proctor, just like you said, look, I have seen some mock drafts that have Parker Brailsford in them, but I'm willing to bet I know between the two, barring something crazy like some kind of weird injury, Kaden Proctor has a much better chance of going pro this year than Parker Brailsford. Or I should say it another way. Parker Brailsford has a much better chance of coming back than Kaden Proctor.
I would agree. I think they're both going to leave, but Proctor is an almost certain first-round pick.
Yeah.
Now the media day isn't about who's going in the first round, but it is about the faces of the program. And you want a top 10 pick, a top 15 pick to be a face of the program.
Mm-hmm.
And Kaden Proctor right now on virtually every mock, you can just spend your day Googling mocks. Proctor is going to be the most often player from Alabama you see mocked in the first round, along with guys like LT Overton. Why wasn't he here? Well, hey, first of all, I think there's another good jumping off point for the media days and who they're bringing. This team has excellent leadership. Let me tell you all something. I'll tell you a team that didn't have great leadership, and it's sort of shocking. But 2022, when Bryce Young was the quarterback and Will Anderson was the best player on defense, that team didn't have great leadership, which is kind of shocking because I will tell you, Bryce Young was a great leader. He really was. So was Will Anderson. He was a great leader. These guys were selfless for as good as they were and how high they went in the draft. But the problem was they were such larger than life personalities to everyone on the football team. They were the unquestioned leaders, but that was it. Because they were so big, almost no one else stepped up. And for a football team of 85 guys, you need more than two. No matter how big a deal Bryce was and how big a deal Will was, you need a lot of guys. That's what this team's got. This team's got a lot of guys who are leaders. And they might not have a Bryce or they might not have a Will, but they got a bunch of guys. Keenan is a leader. For all those that watched the Tie That Binds documentary from last year, it was completely clear Keenan was one of the major team leaders a year ago, and now he's back. Deontay was a captain last year. You know who else could be a captain? Keon Sabb is a great leader in the secondary. Damani, Justin Jefferson's a senior. Quay Russaw is quietly one of the guys that controls the clubhouse, actually. Quay Russaw is a kind of a quiet but powerful personality, if that makes sense. LT Overton is a senior and a likely first-round pick. And I'm just covering the defense, to say nothing on offense, where you got Proctor, Brailsford, and Roberts, and Vandermark and Dewberry, who are all probably in their last years at Alabama. Bernard's a senior. Jam Miller's a senior. Ty's going to be almost certainly the quarterback. I mean, Cuevas is a senior. So there's a ton of leaders on this team, and I think it's going to produce a more disciplined football bunch.
Couple of things. If you were following this podcast in 2022, you know dang good and well, Jimmy and I were saying that exact same thing about the leadership way back when. I remember distinctly talking about, hey, Bryce Young is up there among my favorite players of all time at Alabama. I love that man, okay? And I do think he's a leader, and I think he can be a leader in Carolina. I think they're beginning to see this.
Mm-hmm.
However, like you said, it was almost like they were too selfless in a way that I think Will and Bryce even had this, well, I don't want to overstep Will. Well, I don't want to overstep Bryce kind of thing. And that even sort of created some weirdness. Now, the team was still pretty good. And it was just a couple of weird plays from playing for another national championship, or at least being in the playoffs. But I do think it was a difficult to round out the team. And like you said, first of all, those two guys were super leaders, super selfless, and way up here, and sort of not combating for who's the leader, almost like relenting because they didn't want to overstep. And then everybody else was so low down, there was nobody else that wanted to take up, okay, hey, look, while they're trying to figure out which one of them should be the leader, I'm going to lead. There was nothing like that. And I think this team is going to be full of dudes that are going to be willing to step up. I'm right there with you, like a Tim Keenan, like who's not scared to speak his mind, like a Deontay Lawson who's been through the ringer now, like a Kaden Proctor. Kaden Proctor, and I think he should be rewarded and go to this, because this is a guy that transferred and then came back, and I mean that should mean something. So if you wanted to say, hey, LT Overton should have been there, okay. If somebody wanted to say, hey, it wouldn't have been a bad idea to take Jeremy Bernard, sort of throw him a bone, I don't think Ryan Williams would be upset by it or anything. I don't think anybody would be.
Jeremy should be the leader of that group. He's the only senior, and he's played a ton of college football in his career, despite 3 different places. Jerm should be the leader of that group, but Ryan shouldn't need a lot of leading, if that makes sense.
Exactly. And also, if you're going to put Jeremy on there, just tell me who you take off. Do you take off Tim Keenan? I've given you for me, Tim Keenan's a no-brainer. Yeah. For me, Deontay Lawson. Keenan
and Lawson had to be going. I mean, that was. I think the only question was what player on the offense was going.
Yeah, and then you take. Again, I'm kind of cool taking Proctor, because here's the other thing: I want Proctor to feel like he's a leader. I want this to be a signal to Proctor, like, all right, I'm taking you to this, and we need you to play like you're the kind of guy that we take to SEC media.
I'm looking forward to Proctor on roster ranking day, because he's such a critical piece of this team, and him playing like a first-round pick is vital, because he hasn't so far in his career. I'm just really confident that that's what we're going to see this fall.
Okay, let's talk a little FanDuel, because it's awesome. And summer sports are in full swing. And whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling with FanDuel? You can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach like a bunch of suckers. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. Now, if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started, because FanDuel, you want to play it. We'll be playing it. We'll see you there. Okay, so by the way, I did go back and look 2018, who they took the media days. I don't know why that year stuck out to me, but I did. And listen to this lineup. I mean, because Alabama's lineup on the surface, if you're not an Alabama fan,
that was a quarterback controversy summer. Yeah. Jalen or Tua. So even before you answer, and I tell you two people who weren't there.
Yeah.
Jalen or Tua weren't there.
It was, again, no offense to any of these guys. I love Anthony Jennings. He's sort of a local kid from Dadeville. I love me some Damian Harris. I've always have. And Ross Piercebacher, good dude too. But that was your threesome for SEC Media Days in 2018, when you had dudes like Jerry Jeudy and Tua and Jalen Hurts and on, Najee, and you had guys like that on the team, and you take those three, and it seems like, okay, you didn't choose the 3 sexiest names.
No, just like the leaders. They were the older kid leaders. That's who you take, the older kid leaders.
Yeah.
And if they are great NFL prospects, that's the cherry on top. Now, other schools do it differently. Yeah. Somebody was like, we should have bought Ryan. Ohio State's bringing Jeremiah Smith. They do it differently up there. But I'm telling you, Alabama's done it one way forever. They're not going to change. Ryan's not the first superstar we've had on the team. And
also, I'd say this. We don't want to necessarily admit it, but it's the truth. Jeremiah Smith was the best wide receiver in college football last year. Ryan Williams had the best wide receiver play in college football last year, singular play.
Jeremiah's going to be drafted higher than Ryan.
Jeremiah's going to be drafted higher.
I'm confident saying that.
And I do think there's no doubt in my mind that with the right quarterback, Ryan Williams can have equally equal the same kind of production.
And assuming they're both back, and there's no reason to think, especially Ryan won't be back. Assuming they're both back, Ryan and Ty, if they're both back next year at Alabama, they'll be at Media Days next year. You can write that down right now. Ryan Williams will be at SEC Media Days next year. And if Ty Simpson returns as the starting quarterback, and there's not a quarterback controversy between him and Keelan and Austin, then Ty will be there too.
In fact, I'll take it a step further. If Ty Simpson goes, Keelan Russell will be there. Now, if somebody say, you keep dogging Austin Mack, it's my belief that it's going to be Ty Simpson than Keelan Russell. If Austin Mack does it, more power to him. But I'm just saying I agree.
I agree. That's the line of succession, as I like to call it, because it is more important than the president. That's what I think.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to swap it up from what's on that screen right there. I'm going to do the August 1st thing and what does it mean? Because we have a little less time because we sort of talked a little more about the SEC Media Days than I thought. But so August 1st and what does it mean? Look, it's interesting. At Big 12 is having their Media Days now. By the way, and I think I talked about this on the podcast. I can't remember. I've gotten madder and madder about the fact that they're not going to do a preseason poll about where people are going to be ranked. That's the whole reason for this thing. I can't imagine. What are you doing? And why are you scared? They were like, well, last year we picked Oklahoma State and they didn't win a game in the league. That makes it even more fun. You don't know what you're getting. So, I mean, anyway.
I watched every minute of Big 12 Media Days yesterday on ESPNU. I was very entertained. It's an exciting, fun league full of great quarterbacks. I put out a tweet about it that got no traction whatsoever. Every now and then I put out I thought I was going to break the internet, and it got like 3 likes. I put out this tweet of every start. It's a league full of great quarterbacks. There's a lot of good quarterbacks that are starters in the Big 12 this fall. A lot of returning guys, a lot of good players. And it struck me how few of them were highly recruited. So I spent some time researching, and I put the On3 industry ranking of where each quarterback was ranked coming out of high school. Jalen Daniels, who's really good. Everybody that's a college football fan, big-time fan of college football, knows Jalen Daniels is the quarterback at Kansas, and he's been like a 3-year star. He's a good player. He was ranked 2,200th in his last year. There was only one quarterback who was a 5-star, and I bet most people listening to the show can't name who's the 5-star starting quarterback in the Big 12. Almost no one's going to get this. The answer is Connor Wigman, who's going to start at Houston this fall. I mean, that's out of that's crazy. But yeah, y'all go find my tweet about that. Y'all will be blown away. And the reason that I put it out there is just to remind everyone, when you do get a quarterback that's not a 5-star, not ranked in the top 100, why are you assuming he's going to be bad? The Big 12 is full of quarterbacks ranked in the hundreds, way down there, that have turned into quality starters and potential future NFL players.
Counterpoint. Number one, that's interesting about Wigman, who started out at A&M and, of course, and transferred. And Houston has a 5-star quarterback committed for next class, by the way.
I do.
Keyshawn
Henderson.
Henderson. So I knew it was a son and a shin, or I didn't know. Okay, so the counterpoint I would say about, yes, the Big 12 has some guys that weren't ranked high that have turned out to be very good starters because they didn't get 5 stars and somebody has to start, so they are going to get better. You understand what I'm saying? Like, very few of their guys have come in as freshmen, I think. Jalen Daniels.
Not like they beat out 5 stars to get the
job. It's not like they beat out a bunch of they're all a bunch of 3 stars. Somebody's got to start.
Yeah, but they're good. It would be different if I'm like, boy, what a collection of really average guys. It's a pretty good quarterback league. Sawyer Robertson. That kid at Cincinnati that nobody knows, Brendan Sorsby.
Yeah, he's good.
If you're just going down a list of what the NFL is, 6'5", 235, and is one of the fastest players on the Cincinnati Bearcats. He can throw it and run it. He's 6'5", 235. The NFL's going to be pretty interested in that.
Let's get back to this. Okay, the whole reason we bought the Big 12 was because you did either tweet something or text me something like the Big 12 is kind of approaching recruiting the same way Auburn is about this August 1st date about written offers and things like that. Mm-hmm. I'm still of the belief that I think Auburn has mishandled what they're doing here. And if Big 12 is sort of doing it for the most part, I would say the Big 12 is mishandling it. But I guess there is more of an argument in Auburn's favor if the Big 12 is also doing this.
The Big 12 as a whole yesterday, they did a coaches panel. The Big 12 were all adamant, and then they spoke off the record to Ross Dellinger. Everybody should read Ross Dellinger's article on Yahoo about what the Big 12 coaches are saying. Basically, the Big 12 coaches are saying what Auburn is saying, that we're getting killed in recruiting because a lot of schools out there are making promises to kids that are lies. They can't possibly do what they're promising these kids. And on August 1st, new rules this year, August 1st, these offers, these NIL and revenue sharing offers will be in writing, and kids will see that what they're actually now that it's in writing, and there could be lawsuits because it's in writing, they're going to be less than what they were verbally promised. And there's going to be a slew of decommitments because a lot of these kids are being lied to about what they're going to get, because you can't possibly. Now, I think similar to what Lucas is saying, I don't think August 1st is going to lead to a slew of decommitments. I don't think that's going to happen at all. And I think that these schools are smartly doing this as opposed to just being a bunch of fraudsters and liars and hucksters. I don't believe that. I think they're more smart about it than they believe, and it won't lead to a lot of decommitments. But where I will say this in defense of the Big 12 or Auburn, however, I do think this is still some leftover from the Wild Wild West, and that we're in the first year of house, and kids have been getting so much NIL money for 3 or 4 years. You can't just put the toothpaste back into the tube. You can't. Some kid can't show up and say, "What do you mean I'm only getting 150? Last year, same kid ranked lower than me. You gave him 750." You see what I'm saying? I mean, I think a lot of that's going on because the market has artificially changed because we have these new rules. But the kids and their agents, they know what last year's group got. So a lot of that's going on.
Also, I think everybody has plausible deniability. Like, well, that's not the way I read it. And I think then you go back to the kid and say, look, it could be a situation. We've already seen an example of this. The Felix Ojo, the Texas Tech commitment, right? It immediately is tweeted out. He's getting $5.1 million. And then Texas Tech or somebody associated with Texas Tech comes out and is like, whoa. He's capable of getting $5 million, capable of that. And therein lies the rub. And the other thing that I'd say is if I'm pick a school, if I'm Michigan and I've given and I've said this, and let's say that I did fudge the numbers a little bit or whatever, or I've overstepped my bounds is a better way to say it. And I'd say, well, you're not going to be able to make this money anywhere anyway because of the clearinghouse. I think that's going to be. You should sue the clearinghouse or sue whoever it is, because just like last night talking about the show from last night, my co-host is sort of a traditionalist, and I am too. And he was like, I just don't like this. He said, I don't think somebody should get $5 million for just an hour of signing autographs. I said, you know what? In a sane world, I don't either. But if there is somebody willing to pay him $5 million for that, that's the market. You can't tell me that's not the market. Look, I was listening to some news thing yesterday. They were talking about a former president's son selling some paintings. And he was like, he was getting $500,000 a painting. Because why do you think he was getting that? Because at the time, he was a little like scratching each other's back. But now, if that guy tried to sell a painting, he couldn't give it away because he can't do anything anymore. So that's I just thought that was sort of the same thing. Like, of course, if Johnny 5-star's autograph isn't worth the piece of paper it's written on if he's not a 5-star. But if he is a 5-star, there is somebody out there who go, I want you playing for my team. Phil Knight, he'll go, I want you playing for my team and representing my company. So come over here for $5 million. Well, everybody else is offering me only $200. I'm offering you $5 million. That's the market. That's the way I look at it.
Dellinger has hard figures in his article, and per Dellinger's work on this, 1,200 NIL deals, NIL not rev share, 1,200 NIL deals have been submitted to NIL Go. So far, only 400 have been approved. So 1/3 have been approved. And a lot of them are insinuating
that all of them have been reviewed, though.
That's not all of them. Now, I think he said 80 were flat out rejected. Like, this is not going to be allowed. They can be resubmitted, or you just don't again, but only 1/3 have been submitted and were easily said, okay, that's good, that's good, that's good. And that's interesting, is just now starting. I mean, NIL Go's only been around since June 6th. So we're talking about 5 weeks. How about 1,200 deals passing through that clearinghouse in only 5 weeks? We're just getting started. So a lot of uncertainty out there, and a lot of coaches feeling like they're still dealing with, I mean, let's just be honest, cheating. That's what they're saying. That's what Auburn's saying. So these Big 12 coaches are saying there's a lot of cheating out there. Now, right, is it true? We'll find out.
The third segment's going to be fast, and we're going to do a roster ranking, but I got to tell y'all this because the first thing I thought of, how exhausted do you think the NIL Go people are right now, trying to go through all these things, trying to figure it? It's like an accountant the night before tax day.
They are accountants.
And that is true. It also, that's a good point. It also reminds me of one time with all the telephones, all the internet, everything was out in Lake City. Somebody had hit the magic wire 10 years ago that knocked out everything. There was no nothing. And so my brother and I thought it'd be fun to mess around with my dad, who's still the president of this company. So I walked in pretending like I'm talking on my cell phone. And Dad was like, "You got your phone to work?" I was like, "Yeah." I said, "There's a little trick to it." And then my brother walks in and he goes, "Yeah, Mom, talk to you later." Of course, neither one of our phones were working. We just pretended like. And Dad said, "Well, what'd you do? What'd you do?" He was so he was worried to death. He had, got a couple of companies he's dealing with. And I said, "This is what you do, Dad. Go to airplane mode on your phone." And he gets real close and he goes, and I said, "Now you got to do the toggle on and off real fast." And he goes, "Well, how many times?" I said, "Just do it real fast. Don't talk." He starts doing this. And then my brother says, "Okay, now, Dad, you should be good. Dial 867-5309 and ask for Jenny." And Dad, he started down the number and he goes,
"That's hilarious to everyone listening who's over 50.
He goes, "Who the hell's Jenny?" And then I was like, I had this mental image of Dad thinking there is a secretary somewhere going, "This is Jenny, hold please. This is Jenny, hold please." Like she's helping everybody get their phone back online. But anyway, so that's how tired the NIL
Jenny got around in 1984. Let me tell you.
Yeah, that joke was so much funnier for
in
people
the 80s
over 50. All right, we will do a quick roster ranking person, and it sort of works out because we love this cat. Oh. But he hadn't done the numbers. I looked up the numbers. They're not great numbers. Now, it doesn't mean we love him any less, but this is Zay Mincy. And I looked this up, and at first I thought I was reading something wrong. 6 tackles, no forced fumbles, no interceptions, 2 pass deflections. That's his total for the year.
Yeah. Didn't play a lot until very late in the year when he started playing. This is really a ranking based on what we're here and based on what happened this spring. I'll go this far because this sounds nuts. This is how high I am on Zay Mincy, and again, based on his progress he made late last year and through the spring, because he started out as a corner and then was moved to safety. He's still a safety. Bray Hubbard and Keon Sabb are both all SEC candidates. I would say they're fringe All-American candidates, both older kids who are draft eligible, who are so good they'll have a draft decision to make at the end of this year. Do I head to the NFL or do I remain in college? Because both will have the ability to remain in college. They are one of, maybe the number one, but certainly in the conversation of best safety duos in college football, Keon Sabb and Bray Hubbard, right? I'm telling you guys, Zay Mincy is every bit as good as those two. He'll be every bit as good as those two. In fact, maybe even better. I think long-term, almost certainly better than Bray Hubbard and Keon Sabb. He's still just learning the position, still maturing. He will play, I would imagine, I guess it's best to refer to as co-starter snaps. How about that? You're taking snaps from older all-conference kids, even though you're a true sophomore and you hadn't even been playing the position a full year. That's how good Zay Mincy is. I think he'll be a significant player this fall. Again, I'll call him safety number 3, but he's really more like a co-starter with Hubbard and Sabb, who are, again, all-star candidates. So Zay Mincy, not significant on the team last year as a true freshman, hugely significant this fall as a true sophomore. He's going to be a star football player in his career at Alabama.
As soon as Zion Gibson gets there, and if he starts, we could have 3 dudes with the first name starting with Z in the defensive backfield.
That is crazy.
That's got to be a first.
Not a lot of Z's out there. There's not a lot of Z names out there, but yep, Zion, Zay, and Zabian Brown.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of Z's. I hope they don't get caught sleeping back there.
Oh God, I knew it as soon as you said Z's. I thought no, please. Now, hey, I'm kind of grateful I don't have the oldest dad joke in the.
Well, you told an '80s music joke.
There are people,
and then I told a worse joke.
There are people who were listening to this earlier going, 8675309. So what? Who the hell's Jenny? They were like, who the hell's Jenny? See, the funny part of that is my dad was too old to know who Jenny was. Everybody listening to this is too young to know who Jenny was. The only people who know who Jenny is you and me.
The 8 people that are listening to the show that are between 52 and 55.
Also, by the way, I'm going to do this because I don't want to forget it. And I know I've told it on here before. We also talked yesterday about how that day I walked into the office, and I always get here really early, but Dad usually beats me in. And he's sitting there and he's rubbing his chest like this. And I'm like, oh my God, he's having a heart attack. And I said, Dad, are you okay? He said, yeah. Got stung by a hornet right on the nipple. And I said, I'm sorry, what? And he said,
that would hurt bad.
He said there was a hornet in my bed and I rolled over on him and he stung me right in the nipple.
That is a nightmare. I want to laugh, but my God, that would hurt.
Can you imagine? I mean, I was like, but can you imagine the hornet? The hornet's just like, hey, I'm just laying in bed. That was a second wild creature. Remember, the raccoon also got in their bed, and Dad was playing with it. The wild raccoon, remember?
Well, let's do the next slow day. Let's do the raccoon story again. It'll be about the 5th time on the show, but it will be just as funny. That's one of the great funny stories of all time. I grabbed a doorknob to enter the front door of my house. Now I went out, checked the mail, walked back inside, twisted the doorknob to get back in my house. There was a wasp under the doorknob. So when I grabbed the doorknob, it stung my finger. Oh my God. I would have rather been stung on the nipple.
I'm telling you, I can't imagine.
Oh man, it hurt.
No, I disagree. I can't imagine. I mean, yeah, I can imagine one other place that would be worse than the nipple, but like it would take, I would have to be in a very weird situation to be stung there. Like stung in the nipple in the bed, like just in your bed, your safe place.
Well, that's where it could happen. That's where your nightmare scenario could easily happen. Having a hornet in the bed. That's, by the way, not time to call the exterminator. Probably time to move.
You know, it was very weird for me to go to Dad said, you need to help me out. I went to Walgreens to go buy him some of those pasties. Teasing.
Just tell the checkout girl, this is for my dad.
Yeah, it's not what you think. These aren't for me.
These aren't for me.
Not
these
some weirdo.
All
right, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back tomorrow morning. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.